Odrog Culture presents Odrogs in Hot Pods. I'm Odie.
And I'm Rogue.
And together, this is Odrogs in Hot Pods. And we're off. Another episode of Odrogs in Hot Pods. I am here with my co-host.
Here we are, it's Rogue.
We are discussing the Sequel Trilogy in our Hyperspace Hottakes. Strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be exploring, yes, the Sequel Trilogy in 15 minutes. We're going to try. Then we're going to launch into Echuta, where we have an absolute showdown for you today. Rogue, it is the bearded saber. Back again, your guy. Talk to us.
Here he is. He's back. He's back for the hot debate in Echuta.
Yes, so Matt from Force of Others podcast bringing along a friend of his to debate the Syndicate custom creations and the bearded saber guy. It is on like Wicket wearing a thong.
Nice improv. I like it.
Thank you. No one wants that image in their head. Anyway.
Depends what you're into, I guess.
Thong, 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 thong.
But before we get going on Hyperspace Hottakes, I want to ask you a really big question, Odie. What were the sequels actually about? You've got the original trilogy. It's about hope, right? The prequels are about tragedy. The sequels seem to be about legacy, but I feel like every major character wrestles with it throughout the sequels, and I'm sure we'll touch on it today. But that's what I want us to think about and our listeners to think about. What was it actually about? And we'll see if we can answer it in today's Hyperspace Hot Takes. Odie, do you want to kick us off?
We tend to look for things for clarification of our own beliefs and are blindsided by our own conviction when it comes to films that we don't like. And looking at this trilogy, it really made me think about that. And it made me think about, what are the true things that I love about it? I never realised, and this is a shout out to Ryan George from Screen Rant, who I was watching about these many moons ago. But he talks about that each film represents an original trilogy character. Episode 7, it's about the legacy of Han Solo coming to a close. Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Yeah, that's who it's about. It's about Luke Skywalker. It's the legacy of Luke Skywalker coming to a close as he looks across and looks into the future, sees those twin suns going down. You know, he's reflecting on the past and looking to the future. And Rey is that future. And then you have episode 9, which is, of course, a legacy to the late Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia, or as General as she likes to be called. It's an ode to her and the closing of her legacy. Rey's lightsaber is one of my favorite things about the sequel trilogy, the yellow lightsaber. Poe's X-Wing fighter that I mentioned before, that black and orange, and the way he maneuvers that X-Wing in episode 8. Maz Kanata's castle is uniquely Star Wars. Coming in, seeing all those aliens there, listening to the music, seeing everything happening at that time is really enjoyable and really fun. My next light side hot take is Kylo killing Snoke was cool and subverted expectations for me in episode 8, which is really what it was trying to do and what Rian Johnson was really trying to do. And I understood that. At that moment, what went through your head when Kylo Ren asked Rey to join him?
I thought she was going to. I thought she'd be tempted. I thought she'd be tempted by the overall temptation that you see throughout the film. But for me, I think it was really the collapse of Snoke's backing as a character that destroyed that moment for me. You know, it was the fact that he was just a clone or just a creature of Sidious's puppeteering. You know, for me that was a really weak plot point. That moment could have been so much more had Snoke actually been everything we were sold on him being in The Force Awakens. And so I think for me, that moment would have been so greater if it wasn't for that weakness in the plot.
And of course, my final light side hot take, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, and I'm not sure if you thought about it, but Kylo Ren fulfilled Anakin's endeavor. He fulfilled Anakin's ambition. He fulfilled Anakin's need to be powerful in the Force to save the ones he loves. And he does it at the end of episode 9, saving Rey.
Sure, it aligns relatively well. but I still think it detracts from the sacrifice and from the original Anakin being the one to bring balance. Having said that, I've got plenty of light side takes that I really liked about the sequel trilogy, but yeah, some of the plot lines were a little bit repetitive, which I will get into.
Well, dare I say it? Shall you pull the Holdo maneuver and jump to light speed, mate? Get into those light side hot takes.
It's funny you mentioned the Holdo maneuver because that is one of my light side hot takes. But my number one was that Rey, Finn, and Kylo.
Oh,
Similar to what
we might need to get the sabers out for this one.
Similar to what you'd stated, Rey, Finn, and Kylo were some fantastic character concepts.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the number two I had was The Force Awakens revitalized Star Wars. It was 10 years without a live-action Star Wars film when Force Awakens came out, and it had an enormous task in front of it. And look, I talk a lot about it playing safe, but I think it succeeded by making Star Wars feel exciting again.
Yes.
It got us excited for what the following 8 and 9 would deliver on. And I think in The Force Awakens, it delivered practical effects, adventure, humor, memorable new characters, iconic imagery. They were really clever with how they linked the characters back to the original trilogy cast. And my fourth hyperspace hot take for the light side was Kylo Ren became one of Star Wars' most complex characters. The sequels really belong to Kylo. His journey isn't a simple fall to darkness. It's a struggle between legacy, expectation, identity, belonging.
Massively.
He wants to become Darth Vader, but unlike Vader, he cannot silence his conscience.
Kylo Ren is the answer to all our original trilogy characters. They all meet their demise on some form of connection with Kylo.
Yeah, and I feel like his conflict literally becomes the emotional backbone of the trilogy. Like you follow his roller coaster of emotions, and it steers the films. And my last hot take was some of the best visuals in franchise history are in the sequels. And you touched on it before, Crate's red salt plains, the Starkiller base forests are really underrated. Acto's oceans, wild, unpredictable, similar to what was happening with the Jedi Order at the time. Exegol's lightning storms, the sheer power of the dark side.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned before, the Holdo maneuver, regardless of story debates, the visual craftsmanship is out of this world, and it's extraordinary. And I think that's what I really appreciate from the sequel trilogy.
As Starkiller Base, do you think they planned for it to be Ilum, or do you think that was introduced later to develop the story more?
Good question. I think it was added in later to add gravity to the fact that it would be blown up, because obviously Ilum being one of the primary planets to source kyber crystals, I think its loss is huge to the Jedi Order. So it carried greater weight and greater significance. But yes, I think perhaps it was added later. I actually think it's a huge tragedy that it was blown up, to be honest, because it has so much lore behind it.
Us Jedi fanboys are sitting here in tears. I remember playing Fallen Order for the first time and realizing that it's becoming Starkiller Base, and I was like, oh man, come on. You can't do this to us.
Yeah. No, it's a sacred planet to the Order. Come on. Who decided this?
I'm a firm believer in hope, as you know. So perhaps, if the Death Star can survive the explosion that it possibly has, perhaps there's clusters of kyber crystals just floating through space.
I thought you were about to go with there's an Ilum 2.0 then, and I was like, hang on a second. That's a little bit
not as ridiculous as things that we're going to launch into on our dark side.
I'm hanging out waiting for your dark side hot takes. This could take a while.
If you've got the original trilogy cast of Han, Leia, and Luke,
so true.
You've also got the prequel trilogy trio of Obi-Wan, Padme, and Anakin. Really, that's the comparison here. If you think about everything that those characters experienced between those 6 movies, it's huge. Where in these 3 movies, it's almost forced. The relationship feels forced upon us, that we're expected to feel something.
It's rushed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was my first dark side hot take.
Yeah, it almost predetermines the closeness of the relationship without showing you it on the screen. That's
Yes.
how it felt watching
The
it.
Holdo maneuver, it actually would have been better if it was someone that we knew better. It wasn't just some person that we met in this episode. And I apologize for all the Holdo fans out there, but I just think I didn't have that connection with her that maybe some other fans do. But when she made that maneuver, when she made that sacrifice, it didn't mean anything to me. And I didn't really care for her. In fact, sometimes I found her quite infuriating.
We were cheated out of Snoke's backstory. We were cheated out of the new hero's backstory. We were cheated out of Holdo's backstory, and you didn't have the time to create a connection with these characters or their legacy that was somehow being played out on the screen, and the expectation that you would feed into that or buy into that. And I completely agree with
now more than ever, I think we need heroes. Luke Skywalker being flawed, seeing him drink the green milk. And I know that upsets so many Star Wars fans. For my old man, he enjoyed that moment because he said it's about being flawed and about being human. And in rebuttal to him, I said, yeah, but Luke Skywalker's a Jedi. There's people out there that really believed in this moment. But for me, you know, it wasn't that. It wasn't Luke Skywalker being flawed. It turned a flawless hero, something we can try to strive towards, someone who stood up to the largest evil in the galaxy, who tempted us with lust for power and giving into our anger and hatred. And Luke Skywalker turned around and said no.
But it's also our perception of the Jedi, you know, and that is built up over the prequels, the original trilogy. You know, we have this pedestal view of what it means to be a Jedi, but it also is aspirational and it's inspiring. And I think Luke in episode 8, he contradicts that. He goes against what we understand it is to be a Jedi Master, what it is to be one of the last of his kind and holding that beacon of hope. And he extinguishes that light right in front of us in episode 8 that almost it leads to the audience losing hope in the Jedi. And I think it's like capturing that. And, you know, I think that's one of the biggest disappointments of episode 8. And we talk about it a lot. A lot of fans talk about it. It doesn't do Luke Skywalker justice, let alone what it means to be a Jedi.
No matter what you think about Star Wars, if you love this and you're all about it, I'm all for you. And I love people who have opinions, and I love people and sharing opinions with people and listening to people with opinions. And I think that's what makes Star Wars community so great and grand, is the fact that you can have any entry point into Star Wars. I'm going to get into my next dark side hot take here. And while I do, I think episode 8 kind of forced episode 9 to make some decisions that weren't ideal. And I think they could have gone two ways with this. And perhaps at the drawing board, they made some poor decisions. But that's my own opinion, once again. You know, I think around the fact that episode 9, somehow Palpatine has returned. The thing of, here are some Star Destroyers with some galaxy destroying or some planet destroying guns, and every single Star Destroyer has got one. You know, it reminds me of 8-year-old, 10-year-old Odie and Rogue playing toys, but it's not a conversation around a writer's table. This is where the future steps into play. The love of a fandom, the reliance on the storytellers, the dreamers, the storyboarders, the artists, the animators, the publishers, the concept designers, the beautiful people that make up the fandom to make Star Wars what it is. A story of hope and endurance and legacy, we mentioned. To see through hate and to bring its purity to the forefront of life. We know what good looks like. We know what a good hero looks like. We know how to help each other through tough times. And I think the whole essence of this sequel trilogy is now being backed by all those brilliant creative people and the people that love Star Wars now to fill in those gaps and to make Star Wars as brilliant as what it always has been.
But I think that's the biggest struggle with these films. Everything felt rushed. Everything felt like it was compensating for the decision that was made in the film prior. and it felt reactionary. It didn't feel like you were reaching a crescendo. It felt like the crescendo had occurred and now you were scrambling to make sense of it.
We go from the prospect of Finn to becoming a Jedi to then just becoming Rey's fanboy. Finn shouting, Rey, Rey, constantly through episode 9, only to tell her that he feels the Force. And we guessed that in episode 7, and it's taken us 2 films now just to mention it. Come on. Like, where does his...
I think Finn may represent the trilogy's greatest missed opportunity. I mean, what isn't cool about a former stormtrooper discovering individuality, morality, and Force sensitivity? I mean, come on. That's almost its own separate TV series if you give it time to breathe. It could have been revolutionary.
I've got a question. If you were to give him a lightsaber, what color is he having?
I would say probably blue.
Go blue?
Purely because, well, the character we look at and the character we get to know as Finn seems a little bit anxious, a little bit unsure, a little bit still coming into his own. And I feel like as a Jedi, he'd very much follow the book because he is so unsure. People like that often follow some sort of religion or something to give them some meaning or purpose or structure so they don't feel as anxious, right? We tend to cling to a stronger sense of self. And so for me, blue lightsaber represents that. So I think he'd have a blue lightsaber.
Yeah, see, I think he's got a protective nature. So I think he'd be wielding yellow as well. I think both him and Rey would be wielding yellow lightsabers. Yeah.
You are truly overestimating the character of Finn and what we were seeing by bestowing the absolute honor on him of giving him a yellow lightsaber. Odie.
Give him his time in the limelight, wielding that yellow lightsaber. Hell, you know what? Give him 2 lightsabers. Give him a yellow and a blue. Let's see it. So they're my dark side hot takes, but let's hear it. Let's hear that saber ignite, that unstable kyber crystal that you've got going on in that. Yeah.
Let's do it.
And let's hear you just unleash.
Dark side hot takes. The sequels often feel like episode 7 asks questions.
Absolutely.
Episode 8 rejects those questions. And then episode 9 tries to answer why those rejections took place and tries to answer the questions anyway. It's almost like, it's almost like episode 9 goes, oh, no, don't worry about what happened in episode 8 where we rejected all those things. Let us explain them anyway.
You don't need to see those questions.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to watch episode 8 in order to understand the sequel trilogy. Yeah, no. And the result can feel reactive rather than planned. Okay, so it's hard not to talk dark side hot takes and not mention the return of Palpatine.
Hang on, did Palpatine return?
The line somehow Palpatine returned. It's got to be the biggest gag of the sequel trilogy, and it's become infamous, both for the right and the wrong reasons. The resurrection of Emperor Palpatine divided audiences because it lacked sufficient setup. It reduced the impact of Vader's sacrifice, which I spoke about before. Everything felt on repeat of the original trilogy. Hey, the original trilogy was such a hit in the 70s and 80s. Let's recreate it again. Nah. It arrived extremely late in the trilogy, so there was no talk of Emperor Palpatine. There was no build up to it. All of a sudden, he was just there in episode 9 as a mad scramble to save the trilogy. And to be honest, it did the opposite. To this day, I still wish that Rey was a descendant of Obi-Wan. I think it would have been perfect. We went into the sequel trilogy expecting big things, but each of them received dramatically different receptions. The biggest debate is one we touched on earlier around Luke Skywalker. Supporters saw a realistic portrayal of a broken hero confronting failure and all the storylines that come with that. The critics and the people that were loyal to the original trilogy and the idea of the Jedi, the idea of Luke Skywalker as this beacon of hope, saw a betrayal of the optimistic Jedi who redeemed Darth Vader in episode 6. And I think that divide remains probably one of the most passionate debates in Star Wars history. I mean, even Mark
Yep.
Hamill has come out and said, "Oh, I wish it was different," and we spoke about that earlier. And it doesn't matter, Odie, how many fillers you create in The Mandalorian, in Ahsoka, in Luke Skywalker's own series. We can never take that back because that's his future. And I think that's what really sucks about it. Sure, it'd be great to see Luke Skywalker content. Give it to me, episode 6 to episode 7. I want to see it all. I want to see the building of the Jedi Order. I want to see Luke reaching his full potential. I want to see the Jedi Order rebuilt. But all the time, there'll be that niggling thought in the back of my head, this is only temporary because they destroy the character in episode 8. So that was my number 4. Thoughts?
Luke Skywalker and everything that we wanted for him, I think it's being dispersed. I think it's being dispersed with the hidden path. I can't go through a podcast episode without mentioning Quinlan Voss. Let's just talk about my boy Cal Kestis as well. Tanalor, let's go. New Jedi Order. It's hidden, man. You can't find it. Your hope is there. Don't worry. All right?
My hope is that somehow they'll underwrite or write out episode 8. And some way it'll be like this just bad dream that we all managed to wake up from, and the Jedi Order was fine. Some way, I'm thinking most of the Jedi from Luke's New Jedi Order just go to wherever Grogu is at the time of episode 8, and the Jedi Order survive, and it's all good.
No,
That's kind of what I'm.
They're going to Tanalor. Don't worry. But besides that, you've really got the unstable saber out. You are not holding back here, and I'm loving it.
No, it's definitely flickering. It's about to go out. And my final one is the trilogy often fought against itself, and I know that's a recurring theme in our Dark Side hot takes. But the most common criticism isn't any individual movie; it's the lack of the narrative alignment between all three. The major mysteries are established, then they're dismissed, then they're revisited, then they're replaced. And the trilogy sometimes feels like one story rather than three responses to one another. And I think that's probably one of the biggest.
Look, there is a lot of good stuff as well as negative stuff.
Oh, without doubt.
That we definitely didn't mention, and as I always say to you, you can reach out to us on, what's our email?
It's odrog.culture@gmail.com.
Or you can Instagram us, but what about our Instagram? What is that?
Well, you can Instagram us at odrog_culture. Check us out there.
You should. And you should tell your friends about our podcast. We love sharing things with everybody. We want you to be on the show whenever you feel the chance, and we thank you for listening and joining us on this hyperspace travel.
Odie, I've got one last question.
Oh, have you? Go on.
I want to ask you a really serious question here.
Yeah.
So when the prequels originally hit the big screen, they were highly criticized, highly hated. It divided a lot of fans. It had a few fans excited, but now they've become such a well-respected part of Star Wars lore, and so very much incorporated into our understanding. Do you think that in 10 years' time, looking into the future, taking a look into the future of Star Wars, with the additional TV series that are going to be coming out, with the additional films that are likely going to be coming out, do you think we'll one day look back on the sequel trilogy and go, you know what, they were pretty good, similar to what we've done with the prequels?
I think if we continue down that path of exploring legends and we give quality understandings of character and drive and backstories. We talked about the missing of backstories. And we're already starting to see that in comics. The new release of the Kylo Ren comics, it looks unreal. Seeing his turn, seeing his development, his connections with Snoke, seeing his connections with Vader, and exploring his time between episode 8 and episode 9. We're seeing all those things come to fruition through extra Star Wars media. And I would love to see this kind of developed within shows and everything else. So I think it has potential, is a quick answer.
Yeah, I agree. I think in years, the sequel trilogy may ultimately become Star Wars' most fascinating era. Not because everyone loves it, not because everyone hates it, but because no other Star Wars films generated such passionate debate. The sequel trilogy isn't the story of victory or failure. It's the story of potential. And I think we'll continue to see that potential unravel over the coming years. Sometimes realized brilliantly, sometimes frustratingly missed. And perhaps that's why we're still talking about it. Because beneath all the arguments, every Star Wars fan can see glimpses of the incredible trilogy it could have been. And I think we'll continue to explore that.
Absolutely well said. And with that heavy realization, Bearded Saber Guy, Syndicate Customs versus Force of Others podcast with a pal. And they're arguing Episode 8, The Last Jedi, is true to Star Wars and builds on its lore. Let's find out what they really think.
I really can't wait for this one.
Let's go get it.
Shooter.
And welcome to our Echuta debate for episode 4. Star Wars episode 8 is true to Star Wars and its lore. Usually sitting beside him is his co-host Zach, but today we introduce Matt Butner of Force of Others. With a career in theatre, running a theatre company, and a passion for plays like Much Ado About Nothing, A Few Good Men, and Hamlet, is it to be that he will take it out today?
I'm a writer, I'm a loyal friend, and I love Star Wars.
But he isn't alone in this battle. Joining him is Donnie from the podcast Meddler's Corner, normally with his co-host Matt Dern, but today he joins Force of Others podcast. He's no stranger to talking, but he's also no stranger to electrifying his audience.
Like Matt, I am a loyal friend, but I'm also a passionate friend. Love Star Wars, and being a dad is the greatest thing in the world.
It's massive to have two heavy hitters on the show today, and I'm super excited by that. Bearded Saber Guy, he's combining his passion for lightsabers and beard care, and he's built a strong following through lightsaber unboxings, reviews, collecting content, and Star Wars discussion. If you're into sabers, collectibles, or a quality beard product, he's got you covered. Be sure to check him out at Bearded Saber Guy at his Instagram handle. Joining him is the one and only Syndicate Customs. Also based here in Australia and shipping worldwide, Syndicate Customs specialises in 3D printed figure customisation parts, custom painted accessories and unique upgrades that help collectors bring their Star Wars displays to life. You can find Syndicate Customs on Facebook and through their website. Guys, it's so good to have you back on the show today.
Maybe not super ready, but super keen.
We just don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
No feelings going to be hurt here today, guys. I mean,
No feelings going to be hurt. I'll be fine.
RETCON.
We're going to score this debate as we always score our debates. There's 3 ways that you can win. There's 3 rounds. You're going to be marked on Star Wars lore. You're going to be marked on evidence provided. And finally, you're going to be marked on your delivery of your point. The winner will, of course, receive designed shirt by Odie from Odrog Culture. That's me. The winner will also receive a certificate. Shall we get started? For the positive side, we have Matt and Donnie. Take it away, gentlemen.
I'll admit it's not my favorite movie, but The Last Jedi is absolutely true to Star Wars lore. Octo is a concept that makes complete and total sense. The way they portray the balance of the Force fits with the lore. A one-man fighter being small enough to evade the turbo lasers fits with the rest of the lore. The Force isn't all-powerful in this movie. Snoke can feel Kylo's thoughts. He can't literally read his mind. That's consistent. And this is from a dumb scene, but it's a great line. Not fighting what we hate, saving what we love. In my opinion, dumb scene, but that line sums up what everything in Star Wars is almost always about. Not fighting what you hate, saving what you love. Luke's Force projection is a power that was in Legends. And in this moment, to me, it's the truest realization of a Jedi using the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack, right? And then lastly, Luke Skywalker was always impulsive, and his death scene is the culmination of his character arc. He's choosing to look, hopefully, at the twin suns again. which is what Yoda made fun of him for in The Empire Strikes Back, right? But then in his last moments, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to die with peace and purpose.
I think also, too, the use of the Force in this movie. As we watch Star Wars, we want to go and we want to see things. Yes, this movie didn't give us the lightsaber battle. It gave us the use of the Force, how strong a Jedi is. And also, something very interesting, the Force dyad, how two people can make that connection and become one with the Force. Yoda says it, living things connect us through the Force. And those two, Rey and Ben, are living examples of coming together and being one with the Force.
I'll touch on the dyad piece is interesting because I think I do agree a little bit to a certain degree from a certain point of view of everything you just said. But the dyad is an interesting one because that was constructed by Palpatine. That wasn't really, yes, he did it by Force, but that was, and his power in the Force, but that wasn't the Force itself. He manipulated the Force, like he did with the midichlorians and that sort of thing there. But he's a true manipulator of the Force. So the Force bringing Rey and Kylo together and them seeing each other and trying to understand how it's working, it's just a complete fabrication. So that in itself is a lie, and that's sort of my take on the dyad.
Yeah, you talk about the true Jedis and stuff like that. It's like Rey wasn't a Jedi. If they went with the original storyline, I guess, and made Rey possibly Luke's daughter, she would have been really capable of doing all that. But then for her to be a nobody, and you mentioned that whole scene with Rose and Finn, and I just think as so many people sacrifice themselves throughout Star Wars for the rebellion or the resistance, and to see her completely take out his ship and then go, I'm gonna kiss you, and then you see the massive door just get completely evaporated, and the First Order can just march in and just take over everything. If it wasn't for Rey and her awesome overpowering, they would have all died.
Luke's character is just way off compared to what George built, right? This is the same Luke that refused to kill Darth Vader, even after Vader had committed decades of atrocities, personally tortured his friends. Like he was the baddie of all baddies, and how he, his journey from becoming Anakin to becoming Vader, and that whole story and the atrocity, everything that Vader did. Luke always believed, in amongst all of that, Luke always believed that there was good in people and that he found good in Vader. And right at that last second, he didn't want to kill him. This is the same Luke that then in The Last Jedi is considered to then kill Ben Solo, the son of his best friend, essentially, because he sensed his power and what he may become and all these other things. It's such a similar story arc of Ben to Kylo as Anakin to Vader, and why Luke would have wanted to slaughter him right there and then. Whether he had hesitations, that we don't really know that side of it. To me, it's completely out of character and goes against everything Luke stood for in the original trilogy, everything that he was meant to be building in terms of a new Jedi temple and everything that he wanted for the Jedi. Luke's character is just way off. And everything that he did, just not on point with what George built.
Not just to kill his best friend's kid, it's his own nephew. He was happy to just kill him there and then. And you're 100% right. Like saving his own father and knowing there was redemption, and we see redemption within the Star Wars stories, like Dark Horse Comics, so often. And then for him to not even give him a chance, not even have a chat, I'm just gonna cut you down while you sleep. That was not Luke.
Luke Skywalker is my favorite fictional character of all time. And I'll 100% give you, and my most hated thing about this movie is that he is so refusing to come back. That doesn't make sense to me. However, the third time we see a flashback, it is the truth, and the movie tells you it's the truth. Luke doesn't actually move to kill Ben Solo. He looks into his mind and sees that he will kill every single person that he loves, and in a moment of pure instinct, ignites his weapon and immediately regrets it. And this is the same guy that after Ben and Yoda are like, do not go to Cloud City. It is a trap. They're going to be fine. Don't go. He's like, I'm going to go save them. and then they have to save him because he messes everything up. Same guy. Him and Han and Chewie and the droids are kicking it in the whatever that room is on the Death Star, and everything's fine. They're going to wait for Ben. Oh my God, the princess. I'm going to mess up the plan and go save her and, go have a fun adventure. He has always been impulsive, and that is his nature. That is who he is. Now, what I will not defend is him being unwilling to come back. But that moment of instinct and then immediately regretting it is absolutely, it's the same thing Anakin was, right? Always trying to be too altruistic to save the people that he cares about. So, but like I said, it ties into my biggest beef with the movie. But that moment of pure instinct followed by instant regret, I think that does fit Luke's character. That's all that I would say.
What do these movies want to center around? The idea of hope. That is Luke Skywalker. We want to have, when we walk away from the theater, an idea of hope. And that's what this movie does. It gives us that feeling of hope at the end, that there can be heroes beyond Luke Skywalker.
Sensing the DL-34s have been whipped from the sockets and they're ready to go off, and the lightsabers are swinging to deflect any blaster fire we possibly can, so things are definitely heated up. Let's head into round 2. Once again, we let the positive side go first, as always. Matt and Donnie, take it away. Let's get those lightsaber swingings. Round 2.
I want to talk about Yoda's lessons. Throughout every movie, even in OG, even in the prequels, Yoda always gives us a Yoda quote. And so Yoda teaches Luke that knowledge is important, but growth comes from learning from mistakes. And this builds themes that are established throughout the saga rather than contradicting them. It shows the Jedi Order continuing to evolve.
The greatest teacher failure is an all-time Star Wars quote from not an all-time Star Wars movie. But in terms of being true to the lore, that is something that it would make sense for especially a Skywalker to learn in the Skywalker saga. You can make the debate that it probably shouldn't have been Luke, but that scene totally fits. And for Yoda to teach him one last lesson, as silly as that is, and then diving into the crate of it all, the Luke appearing. Would I have loved to see him show up in the flesh and actually be the revolutionary we grew up believing him to be? Yes. But for him to single-handedly outsmart basically the entire First Order, or at least just Ben, that's Luke Skywalker. That to me is the epitome of Luke Skywalker. And I think that fits with who he is.
All right.
But
you just said that Yoda told Luke to learn from his mistakes. What did Luke learn except for the fact that, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have struck him down. Oh my God, I'm going to collapse the whole school down. I'm just going to piss off to a little island and never come back. He didn't learn anything. All he did was run away and cower like a coward. That is not a Skywalker. That was Disney adding what the new, how do I say it? The Game of Thrones, the subvert expectations. Everything they did in episode 8 was completely to subvert expectations because that was fashionable.
I think Yoda's words that echoed through, 4, 5, 6, even 1, 2, 3. He teaches everything that the Jedis need to know, and it's always more wisdom related. It's always more learn as much as you can, take in as much as you can, and then pass on those teachings. And yeah, I mean, to a point, the greatest teacher failure was the words from Yoda, and I think Luke not being able to really dive into that himself is probably his biggest failure. And the fact that he still needed Yoda to then show up and go, you still need to push on, dude. Like stop being a little bitch, get out there, teach the next generation of Jedi, do what you're supposed to do, and be the master Skywalker that you're meant to be.
Episode 8 completely broke what we knew about Star Wars. We've got a few examples, just a couple. We have the Resistance ship flying away from all the First Order ships, and you're seeing them shoot cannons at them. Now, standard physics is you'd shoot something in space straight, and it would just continually go straight. Why are these massive cannons arcing and then suddenly just missing the back? of the ships. That is not Star Wars. That isn't even normal space physics. And then you have the escape pod that manages to go all the way onto another planet. Why weren't we sending more escape pods out if they weren't catchable? And then for them to come back, you know, to save the day, sort of. Also, it just seems not possible without any detection. And the last thing is the Admiral Hodor. Is it Hold the Door? Sorry. Hodor? Yeah, see, there's a Game of Thrones reference again. Hold the door. She turns, you know, she sends her ships out, and then she does a 180 and does a suicide run, which, hey, if we could do that and send all these ships into hyperspace to destroy massive ships, why didn't the Rebels just do the unmanned ships into hyperspace and just blow the crap out of the Death Star? None of that suited the lore and even the physics of space.
Yeah, rewatching that again recently and just seeing it, I just sort of put my head down and I just shook my head thinking, what's happening there? Like, how is that even possible? And definitely the escape pods. You know, you could argue something around they're so small, they're undetectable, but if they're, you know, able to be undetected, why are we not sending them to planets?
So, and first off, I'm not even going to touch the hold on maneuver because I agree. It doesn't make any sense. But as far as just physics in general in Star Wars, as for how science in Star Wars works, there's a George Lucas quote that was around the time of the original trilogy. He said, well, in my universe, there's fire in space when I want it. As soon as science comes into the conversation in Star Wars, it's why do ships drift in space? Why do you hear sound in space? Why are there explosions and fire and all of the science is it comes down to kind of the needs of the story. And then it's same with the escape pods. Like, what story do they want to tell? And even with the hold-on maneuver, there's that Clone Wars episode where Anakin flies the giant battleship with an ion cannon. He hyperspaces it into a moon. Hyperspace collisions had existed before. I'm going to stop defending the hold-on maneuver because I can't. But in terms of like the science in Star Wars in general, that has always been kind of funky.
Are we analyzing an orange from an apple or an apple to an orange? So I didn't recognize it, just quite honestly. Like, y'all are smarter than me, and y'all probably saw that. But me as a moviegoer, and I think other moviegoers, and just as a Star Wars fan, I didn't see it, nor did it bother me in any such way. And nor would I think it affect in any way the lore that Episode 8 brings.
Round 3, generally we've had lightsabers swinging, we've had blaster bolts being fired, but now we're getting serious. Someone's brought a Death Star. Someone's brought a whole pack of seismic charges ready to let off and hear that glorious sound. Let's hear it. Round 3, a showdown of all showdowns. The final round of the Achuta debate. Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi is true to Star Wars lore.
This has really set the scene for a final round 3, and it's going to be really, really close. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear the last points.
We talked about earlier how we said it's not Jedi. I heard someone say not Jedi. You know, what is the definition of a Jedi? You know, we got Jedi in this movie. You know, we had Luke's final stand. And I think that's the final thing I just want to say. That was the definition of a true Jedi, the use of the Force. Not a single clash of the saber. And he defeats the First Order single-handedly himself. And of course, yes, he fizzles away and goes back to his rock, meditate before he dies. But he saves the Resistance through his wisdom and sacrifice. Again, coming back to this whole thing of hope. And in Star Wars lore, in any movie that we want, George Lucas says, and he's even told Filoni, let these movies center around hope. So if we want to say it's not lore, I highly disagree, because at the end of the day, this movie gave us a symbol of hope.
To bring Luke Skywalker back into it, at the end of the movie, he doesn't cower. He is the hero he's meant to be. The point of contention for me is that he probably could have been there at the beginning, but outside of the amount of time that he spent hidden at the end of the movie, like Don just said, that is the definition of a Jedi. Not using a single weapon, not killing a single person, but saving the people that needed to be saved. Doing it purely, using the Force purely for knowledge and defense. I do think this movie shows the Force in an accurate way. Yoda doesn't say you can't pick up the X-Wing, it's too big. Only different in your mind. Does Rey pick up a bunch of rocks? Yes. I don't think the Force has limits, and that is consistent. It's about how centered are you, how focused are you, especially for people on the light side. So in that regard, I think this movie shows that on multiple occasions.
Good luck.
I might need hope myself, so we'll see. Look, you're right. Star Wars is all about hope. Can't touch that. But in terms of Luke bringing hope and the type of person that he was, we touched on this before, but Luke was hopeless. He was just down in the dumps. He ran away. He isolated himself. He went into hiding, and not even to the same level as what like Yoda did when he went to Dagobah. He meditated. He learned a lot more. Whereas we really don't know much about what Luke did over there. I don't believe, but he sort of just sat there and became a big mole man, and drank some old booby milks and until Rey turns up, and even then he has no hope whatsoever. I will touch on one thing as well, a slight rebuttal to it, but a little bit of a side quest there. If Luke was that in touch with the Force at the time, which he should be, if he was a George Lucas Skywalker, a Luke Skywalker from George, he would have sensed Han's death. He seemed like he had no idea. And that, to me, he's just dropped off. He's closed himself off from the Force, which Rey actually even says that while they're there on Octo. And I think Luke has just lost all hope in my eyes. So
he didn't defeat the First Order. I think the Luke that we knew, the reckless, crazy Luke, he was a coward in the whole movie, and he wasn't powerful. He did a little Force ghost thing, and then he died straight after. It's just like, bro, you're only like, what, 60? How old was Yoda? I know, different species. But it's just, he was a coward. He didn't have Force powers. He just sort of mirrored himself. And I'll get into that in my next point. Like I said before, it has to be its lore. And Luke was not a Star Wars lore Luke. And when you have the main character as a Skywalker become completely opposite, and like I said, Game of Thrones subvert expectations. Everything that Luke did was subverting our expectations, and because of that, I think broke so much canon lore of Star Wars. Yeah, was it cool to watch? Yeah, but then the more you thought about it, and you're like, did Luke really die? Did he just turn up and I got excited and he died?
The Star Wars, the space battles, with the physics stuff aside, that being a problem, but Poe as a character, everything that goes on in space as the Resistance, I think is great. I really actually enjoy that. I really enjoy that side. But when it comes to the lore, like, you can't really break lore when it comes to that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the lore around Luke and the Force and those sorts of things, The Last Jedi introduces Force abilities that have been disconnected, and we haven't where they've been established in previous movies. Leia surviving in space and just being able to sort of fly back to the ship and bring herself in. Is she moving herself through the Force? Is she bringing the ship closer to her? Yes, there's been stories and understandings that Luke had trained with Leia. Leia had trained with Luke at some points. But at what point has any generic Star Wars goer really understood that Leia had enough Force power and was that in tune with the Force to be able to just whimsically do that and pull that up out of nowhere and just go, yep, I'm going to bring myself back into the ship and survive? And Star Wars has always expanded on the Force, but usually with training and with lore and clear storytelling. And Episode 8 just doesn't do that. It just sort of happens. And, Rey's always just felt something inside her to go, I've got this thing inside me. I don't know what to do with it. Whereas as Luke, just when he was training with Yoda, he was able to build that up almost out of nowhere. Him being Vader's child, Anakin's child, is a bit different. So there's more storytelling that are there. There's lore in that. But in this film, many of these abilities seem to appear when the plot needs them and when the story just needs it to happen. So which makes the universe feel less grounded. It feels less consistent with the lore that had come before in 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3.
we said something about the use of the Force or the lack of the Force. When's the one time on screen or film that we saw a Force-sensitive being transport their essence to another planet? That is raw power. Okay, some can argue, well, that's the use of the Sith. You know, the Sith looks at their teachings towards power, towards anger, towards hate. But he showed his true power. He showed his wise ways of the Jedi by going to another planet. He was going to do this through his teachings, not clashing. I'm going to do this the pacifist way, as I call it. I mean, honestly, it was, you know, what I wanted to see as a lightsaber duel of all lightsaber duels, absolutely. But another thing, it was said that he was a coward. Luke wasn't a coward. I'm going to take this to this point. You know, as someone who has PTSD, he basically tried to kill his nephew. How would you feel? What would you seclude yourself from? You would seclude yourself from the rest of the world. Knowing me personally, I would do the same thing. Why on earth would I want to go back into the world and, you know, start redoing the Jedi thing? No, I went against the order itself. And so at the end of all of this, we're getting a Star Wars story. We got shown a Star Wars story that, yeah, some of it has its gripes, it has its downfall. But at the end of the day, we have a story that is true to its lore and true to Skywalker, who I think personally wasn't a coward. He was just going through it.
Does he run away? Does he hide? For most of the movie, yes. That is not what he does at the end. Not only is that not what he does at the end, he, like I said before, he is there as much as he can be at the end. They have said that they did not know that he would be able to, that anybody could lift the X-Wing out of the swamp and fly it. The ship was dead. So they did not intend for there to be a way for him to get there. But again, lore-wise, at the end of the movie, he is the ultimate Luke Skywalker, and he does also fall back on his youthful idealistic ways from when he was a kid and choose to look at the twin sunset, like I said at the very beginning, and die with hope. Was it an epic, amazing, super force-powered battle? No. Is that what Yoda ever wanted him to do? Absolutely not. Under no circumstances is that anything Ben or Yoda ever taught Luke Skywalker to do or wanted him to do, right? And now I was very upset when somebody brought up Leia being Space Mary Poppins because I have no defense for that. The only other thing that I can say, there have been two other instances in lore since that movie that other Jedis have pulled themselves through space with the Force. Kanan did it on Rebels, and then Luke did it in canon comics. Granted, that's after the fact, so is what it is. But again, that ties back to me, how focused are you? How centered are you? How surrendering to the Force are you? Wild things always happen in Star Wars. The Jedi are supposed to be kind of overpowered, or the story to a degree, or the story doesn't really work. But in terms of Star Wars lore, the other thing that we haven't talked about, the Force times between Rey and Kylo. I'll be quick. That, to me, is a very logical next step in the exact same thing that we saw Luke and Vader doing, or rather Vader doing to Luke in Empire, and Luke doing to Leia in Empire. If I can reach out and talk to someone, it would make sense that, especially if there was an outside person bridging them together, I'd be able to literally see them. I think that all that fits with Star Wars lore.
Whoa. Whoa. All right. This has been huge. There's points on both sides that I am fully in with and that I agree with wholeheartedly. And it's like I'm being torn apart. Literally, I want to give you guys justice. It's well deserved. You've all done such an amazing job. Rogue, did you have yours ready to go?
I can tell we're both sweating here. I mean, in summary, are we here to talk Luke Skywalker becoming a wise and stronger Jedi Master in exile, or did he become a grumpy old bloke drinking green milk and yelling at tourists? You know, the argument could be made for both, and it certainly was throughout this debate. Luke ultimately, through his sacrifice, so much an ode to his character, ultimately saved the Resistance and brought that symbol of hope, which is what Star Wars is all about. And you can't argue with that. You really can't. That it was, in fact, Rey reaching the ultimate level of her powers that ultimately defeated the Resistance in a strong rebuttal from Bearded Saber Guy and Syndicate Customs, which it's really, really hard to judge this one. Incredibly hard, because we're sitting here as fans of these films, and we have our own criticisms of the film. And I certainly would have to say that never would I step into the ring to defend this film. The fact that our friends from Force of Others and Meddler's Corner have come in today to take on that charge, even when every single ounce of their character doesn't agree. My hat's off to you, and all credit. Look, this came down to the wire. I'm not going to lie. Heading into the last round, Bearded Saber Guy and Syndicate Customs was slightly ahead. But I thought the last round, Force of Others and Meddler's Corner podcast really drove home some great points and had some epic counterpoints as well. When have we ever seen a force projection to another planet? That sheer power of Luke showed that his ultimate sacrifice was about protecting and saving others, and led perfectly into Rey taking on that mantle for the Jedi Order in the subsequent film. So for me, it was neck and neck, 40 out of 45 for both contributors today. And so, Odie, I hate to do this to you, but it's over to you.
When Rogue puts me in these positions, I've got to be harsh. It's time to let go of the past and let go of everything that was before and to move on. And that's really hard for us when we love something so much. Round 2, growth comes from making mistakes. The quote from Yoda, the greatest teacher failure is. Yeah, absolutely. Rebuttal around, well, there's no more Skywalker. We're trying to push away from that. So the attempt to subvert expectation in Yoda's words, Luke's not actually there. And I think the comment was Luke's being a little bitch, which the mention of Holdor. Holdor. I don't know. When it comes down to marking of Star Wars lore, I've got to be picky and I've got to be aggressive on this, because while the points were strong, the rebuttals were stronger. And we could have had a whole debate just on rebuttals and have you guys go back and forth with each other. It was neck and neck for me as well. Force of Others, Meddler's Corner. You have taken it out. It was 1 point in it again.
Well done, Force of Others and Meddler's Corner. Absolutely well done. The rebuttals were on point, and yeah, this was a hard one. This is a hard one to rebuttal, have rebuttals both ways. So yeah, and Syndicate, shout out to you, man. It was awesome to work with you
and everyone else.
Y'all are incredible. Good job. Y'all are awesome, and I want to have y'all on my podcast.
Same. I also want to invite y'all on Force of Others if you're willing. But also, just fun fact, I read the instructions wrong. I didn't realize we had another point at the beginning of every round. And so I was like, oh, okay, I got to make something up.
Weird. I was like, scroll, notes.
I guess I'll just talk about Luke more.
Yeah, we picked up on that. Yeah. It was some debate, and it really, to me, like we've been saying, it came down to the rebuttals, and I think that's the first time we've ever had a debate like that. Ooh. And it was a lot of fun. It was actually a lot of fun to listen to, a lot of fun to judge, and yeah, it's been so awesome having all you guys on. This was a powerhouse of a debate.
Absolutely, a huge powerhouse. You can find Matt at Force of Others podcast on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you find your podcasts, and the little snippets on Insta is always fun. Another shout out to Donnie. Thank you so much from Meddler's Corner and coming on today, taking the win. They'll be very happy with that. And finally, I'd like to thank Syndicate Customs Creations. You can find him on his website. And of course, to the Bearded Saber Guy, which you can find on Instagram at the Bearded Saber.
So thank you very much.
If you didn't agree with us, Monday is the release of the poll. Get onto Instagram, vote, cast your vote on who you thought should have won at Odrog_Culture. Now it's time for Honour the Ghor. Honour the Ghor. Okay, everybody, here we are. Honour the Ghor, where we are going to talk about a question from the MIT guy, a local listener who has chimed in about some websites saying that the sequel trilogy is going to be retconned. We are going to put a stamp on this right now. We've read the article from Screen Rant, which a lot of other websites have documented and noted. They're basically saying that the word of retcon, what it means is that it's just meaning that they're filling it up with stories. Exactly what happened with the Clone Wars. But it just, in our opinion, I think, well, for mine, and Rogue, I'm going to ask yours soon, but I just think that it's just enhancing the stories it was. What do you think, Rogue?
Yeah, I agree. I think the definition of retcon has been lost in translation, or maybe lost in the fans' interpretation. I think a lot of us hang on to the hope that the sequel trilogy is going to be completely renewed and completely replaced. But I really just do not think that is reality. I think, like we're saying, the definition behind retcon is more around fleshing the stories out a little bit better, which I think is what the article's referring to.
It's almost like we've got our creators, as we said during our episode, that we've got our creators actually paying homage to what has been done before, and that's what we need to try and do, and that's what was done with the Clone Wars with Episode 2 and Episode 3 and Episode 1. With the prequels, there was a lot of fan backlash about that time as well. So we're just going to get into this, Geeks and Games, Generation Tech, who's a great YouTuber. Give him a follow if you can. There's Screen Rant as well, Comic Find, GameSpot. Look, they're all reputable places and they're all really good. And they share a lot of great Star Wars content. But at the end of the day, sometimes things become really misleading. Some of the evidence they've listed, Disney's not putting new trilogy characters on a poster. Disney did not show Sequel Trilogy in 2025. No cameo appearances or acknowledgement of Sequel Trilogy characters. Sequel Trilogy, it's not even in the top 10 Star Wars streaming content, and creator of the trilogy, Kathleen Kennedy, has stepped down. While that's all going on, there's no way that they're going to completely retcon. But I guess the question here, and Rogue, I'm going to throw it to you soon, is if there was a retcon, what would you change?
I will say before we get into it, until we hear such things from Lucasfilm, Dave Filoni, then it can't be something we believe. No matter what we read online, it's not accurate. But what would I change? Well, I actually think the sequel trilogy had a lot that was going well for it. I think the characters they introduced are genuinely good. Good ingredients for a good trilogy. Rey, Kylo Ren, Finn, Poe. I liked Exegol as a concept. I like Luke's final sacrifice. I like the idea of a fallen Solo, the remnants of the Empire evolving into something new. These are things I really enjoyed. I don't think the problem was the characters. I think it was the lack of a unified story, which we've talked a lot about in the episode. So I think when it comes to retconning, particularly The Force Awakens, I'd make a few changes. I'd give Finn a stronger Force-sensitive arc from the beginning. I'd explain Snoke's origins earlier. I'd make the New Republic feel like an actual galactic government rather than something destroyed in 5 minutes. Show Luke actively searching for an ancient threat rather than simply hiding it. The movie ends then with Rey finding Luke exactly as it did. When we get into Episode 8, Luke returns as the master we expected. This is where I'd make the biggest changes. Star Wars The Last Jedi has brilliant ideas, but push them too far. I'd keep Kylo killing Snoke. We talked about that. It's an epic scene. The Force connection between Rey and Kylo, I'd keep it. Luke's disillusionment, I'd keep it. I'd change that Luke would still be troubled, but not completely withdrawn from the Force. He would spend most of the film training Rey and uncovering a larger ancient Sith threat. And then Finn would lead a stormtrooper rebellion rather than the Canto Bight subplot. Snoke's death would reveal he was merely a servant of something bigger. So Luke actually survives Episode 8 in my retcon, and the galaxy finally sees its legendary Jedi Master return, which we talked about, in the debate. We wanted to see that. Then we get to Episode 9, the final film in the trilogy. This is where I believe the trilogy should have climaxed, but instead we got somehow Palpatine returned, which we've talked a little bit about, in our hyperspace hot takes and also our debate.
Yes, and what about the dagger? Are you going to include
the First Order?
Yes.
Oh yeah. That's all included. That's all included.
Yeah, you've got to include the dagger, right? You can't get rid of the greatest MacGuffin of all time.
But I would have actually revealed that Snoke and the First Order were pawns of an ancient Sith cult operating in the unknown regions for decades. So I wouldn't even go down the Palpatine line. The final conflict becomes Rey embracing the Jedi legacy, Finn becoming the first new Jedi of a new generation, Kylo Ren seeking redemption, Luke leading the Jedi one final time. So Luke dies in Episode 9 after helping defeat the Sith threat, allowing Rey, Finn, and a redeemed Ben Solo to rebuild the Jedi Order. That's how I would.
That's a quick run through and a good run through for what we've just been talking about. Absolutely. Well, mine, we've talked about this before, but mine would be following the Marvel act of inspired by comic books as Marvel does. Still tells similar stories. I would have loved to see Darth Caedus meet his demise to Jaina Solo, the way that the books have done it. It's always really interesting to see how our love of the EU and the Legends lore is kind of fed through even more so now with everything that's coming up, and kind of the inspiration for all these documents around revitalizing or retconning, the Sequel Trilogy. It's actually from all the drip feeding, I think, from all the Legends stuff. And I would just still have that in my retcon. I would have Jason Solo, Jaina, and Anakin Solo all introduced in this episode 7, with us becoming, really into their relationship. Episode 8, I'd have a war breakout later on down the line and have a little bit of time between them, and have Anakin Solo die and Jason Solo saving the day of the war, only to be turning to the dark side at the end of the film, even if it's just a glimpse of his eyes turning to those Sith eyes. And then time jump again into the final episode where we see Darth Caedus in his full glory and killing Mara Jade, only to then be avenged by his twin sister Jaina. And I would love to see the relationship of
give us the
kind of give us, but it doesn't have to be the same story. It's, as I said, I do what Marvel's doing now with Disney is that they're being inspired by the comic books, but we're still getting Spider-Man doing Spider-Man things, We're still, and it's still Peter Parker.
Yeah.
It's not Kylo Ren. It's
Odie, with this retcon, I've got a very important question.
Go on.
I've got a very important question, Odie. Sorry to interrupt. Would we be introducing
Of course, we're introducing Kip Taran
on the big
You better
screen.
believe it. Why would we not introduce Kip Taran? For those people who want to do a deep dive, Kip Taran, have a look. Look up. It's Rogue's favorite Jedi.
Yeah. Check out our earlier episodes too.
Look, and of course, I'd still have the Sith dagger, because how can you not? How can you not have the the greatest MacGuffin of all time? Oh my gosh, we didn't even mention it in our Dark Side hot takes.
Oh my God, look at that on the horizon.
Yeah.
That looks like my dagger.
Hang on a second.
Wait a second. I'm going to hold my dagger up. 2 seconds.
Oh my goodness. We didn't even mention it in our Dark Side hot takes. It really surprised me. I'm like, come on. We have to bring that in.
Well, I was waiting. For this opportunity.
Where I say there's no retconning the dagger. You're keeping it in always. All right. Look, that's all we have time for.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us on this episode. It's a long one. It's a big one. We hope you enjoyed it. Hey, if you've got an opinion on Star Wars, you can reach out to us and tell us it, because we want to hear it. Believe it or not, we do. And if you've got haters online, we want to hear their opinions. If you're one of the people that, love to rage bait, we want to hear you. We want you to rage bait with us, don't we? Really? Because we'll debate.
Or rage bait it.
Yeah, 100%. Against us, with us, whatever goes. Even though we're not rage baiters and we're not haters, we love everything Star Wars, and we love that you love Star Wars. So thank you so much. Rogue, did you want to finish off with anything? Any insights? Any deep insights from Rogue today? Go for it.
Just complimenting what you've already said, that Star Wars fans of all backgrounds and all opinions and all thoughts and feelings are welcome on our show. And that I had an absolute ball today. I really enjoyed the debate. I reckon this is probably one of the best debates we've ever had, and I can't wait for our listeners to hear it. But outside of that, Odie, I think it's time.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.